Hi everybody, and welcome to one of my interviews with school leaders across the UK. This is interview number 3 with Sam Strickland, who's the principal of the Duston School in Northampton. I've come in today, I've spent the morning here, and hopefully we're just going to have a little chat about some of the things that Sam is doing in his school, and some of the changes he's made and where the school is going from this point forward. So I've got a collection of questions. Some of them are similar to the questions that I've asked Catherine Birbal-Singh and Georgina Young, and questions that I'm going to be asking other leaders. Some of them are specific to Sam's context and what he's trying to do. So Sam, do you want to just a very quick introduction to yourself and your role here?
So I'm Sam Strickland. I'm the principal here at the Duston School. The school is an all-through school, so we start in early years, we go through to post-16. I took over in April of 2017. And the school is a requiring improvement school. It's quite a difficult, challenging, contextual setting. And when I took over, behaviour wasn't particularly good, results were not particularly good, and the school was kind of on a trajectory really to potentially becoming a grade 4 category school.
Yeah. And just to start with my observations, which I've been incredibly impressed, and I'm not just saying that because I'm in a live stream with Sam. I've been incredibly impressed by what I've seen today from my professional point of view. I just want to ask you a range of questions, but the first one is always my opening jokey question of what do you grab first thing in the morning?
I grab a shower so I don't spend the day smelling.
Yes.
That probably wouldn't help me really in terms of working with people.
Yeah.
Actually, when I come in the school, probably the first thing I grab is a cup of coffee, actually.
Yeah.
Just to try and energise myself and wake myself up. And then I go about my daily business.
Yeah, and we were talking earlier about in terms of different principals have different times when they get into school. What would be your average time of getting into school?
Yeah, I tend to come in somewhere between 7:30 and 7:45. That gives me a good 30 to 45 minutes before we invite the students into the building, because they come in at 8:15. So it gives me time to kind of compose myself, prepare myself, look at any emails that I might need to look at, and just get things ready for the day, and then we're straight into it.
Yeah, and as a principal, as a person, what do you think people notice about you?
I hope they notice my enthusiasm, my energy, my commitment to what I do. Equally, I hope that people don't feel I take myself too seriously. I'm quite happy to have a laugh and a joke.
Well, you're having an interview with me, Sam.
That's very true. I'm not sure what I'm doing. But I do hope that people take the view that I take what I do really seriously, even if I don't take myself particularly seriously.
Absolutely. I think for me that's come across today loud and clear. So that's what you think people will notice about you. What do you hope people notice about you?
Yeah, in terms of hope, I hope people think that I'm determined. I know resilience is a word that we use lots in this profession, but I do hope people feel that I have resilience, and that I will see something through, and that I mean what I say. And in terms of the vision that I laid out for this school kind of when I joined, taking this context as a case in point, that I've actually, I know we're not there, we're not finished, but I'm doing the things I promised I would do in the way that I promised I would do. There's authenticity to what I do. That's what I would hope.
Yes, thank you. And so I always say on social media, I think we, especially with school leaders or leadership, we sometimes get in a position where people aren't maybe as open about their failures or their weaknesses as they could be. So if I was to ask you, what's your biggest weakness or fatal flaw?
I'm very self-critical. And so part of that, I suppose, the yin to the yang, is that I've got really high expectations for things. But then I have really high expectations of myself as well. So if I produce something that's substandard, I'm very critical of myself as a result. So I can beat myself up.
How does that manifest on a daily basis? I mean, do you have a lot of introspection periods where you're thinking, have I done the right thing, or is it?
It tends to be in the car on the way home, on that commute. It's just you, the steering wheel, and your thoughts. That can be quite dark at times.
Yeah, definitely.
But no, that's probably a real point where I really reflect on the day.
That's your downtime.
That's my downtime, but I reflect as well, extensively on what happened that day, that week, that term, and what could we have done better? And I'm always thinking, what else could we do better?
And sometimes you're probably quite hard on yourself in those reflections, I would guess.
Yeah, there are points where I am, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And that's a weakness of maybe thinking too much or overthinking. What's your biggest strength, do you think, as a school leader?
I would hope an understanding actually of what it is to be a classroom-based teacher, and not losing kind of sight of what it's like to do 5 lessons a day, non-stop, the workload that goes just with that in its own right, because you are a performer in many regards, however we kind of badge, the role of a teacher within the school.
Agreed.
So I would hope that, and I would see that as being a strength of mine, that I've got that level of empathy and understanding of what it is to be a class teacher, even though I'm a senior leader. If that makes sense.
And we'll discuss. We might touch on your workload charter later on, and certainly I'm going to tweet it out later on my account so people can have a look at that. But it's obvious that from what I've seen that you do take kind of teacher workload, teacher well-being seriously, and you're doing everything you can to make a difference on that. What I suppose a slightly comical question next, but your school days, awesome or terrible?
Do you know what they tend to be by and large? Oh, sorry. What do you mean when I was at school myself?
When you were at school.
My apologies. Do you know what? I really enjoyed school. I did. I really enjoyed school. There's certain subjects I hated, and there were subjects that I absolutely loved. I'm an absolute history geek. I nearly went down an all-science route at A-level, but I didn't. I saw the light. I went with history and geography, because they coloured in maths. I don't actually mean that. But no, I really enjoyed school, and I made a lot of good friends that I'm still in contact with, that I've got all the time in the world for. So, personally, I enjoyed school. Okay.
And so just in general, what is your number one biggest pet peeve? What's the thing that you can't stand?
What I can't stand? Excuses. Where people make excuses for something they haven't done properly, or they haven't done. I'd rather people were just honest and just said, I didn't have enough time, or I didn't understand it, as opposed to just making bad excuses for why they haven't. I think it's far better if someone just says, I've made this mistake, but actually we think about how we move forwards with that and what we learn from that, as opposed to trying to sugarcoat it and cover it up. Yeah.
And I think that's something we've met 2 or 3 times now, and that's something I've definitely recognised in you, is that you see your relationships with people as that investment, and therefore, because they make a mistake, it's not suddenly going to change.
It's not the end of the world, is it? And we all learn from our mistakes. Yeah. And actually, I think we learn far more by making mistakes than we do by getting things right all the time.
Yeah. So what's the one? I mean, this kind of links in a way, but what's the one personality trait that you simply don't have any time for?
Laziness. If I'm really, really honest, laziness. As much as I'm into workload and reducing workload for staff, and I think that we've got a moral duty to do that, certainly as leaders. Yeah. This is still always probably going to be a tough job. There's still a degree to which we do have to work hard, and it's where your laziness impacts on everybody else and increases their workload. That's probably the thing I've got the biggest issue with.
Thanks. And in terms of, again, throwing in another random one, short answer may be needed. No. Comfortable silences or non-stop talking?
Well, you've been around me today. I think we've gone for non-stop talking all day long.
To be fair,
you're a chatter.
Yeah, you wouldn't have been able to get your job done if I'd have been here for any longer than today.
I like a silence when I'm doing my own work behind closed doors, but no, when I'm out there, out and about, in the school community,
have a conversation.
I like conversations and I think that's really healthy.
And I suppose this is another, dichotomy question, if you like. But what's better, being nice or being fair?
I think being fair. Nice can be perceived in the wrong way. It could be taken as a weakness, you could be taken for a ride. I think being fair and nice, actually, is probably a much better cocktail. Yeah. And people respect fairness, I would argue.
I mean, funnily enough, I've interviewed 3 head teachers, you're the 3rd so far, and every single one has said fair. None have said nice, and I think that tells her. I'm waiting for the one who's going to say nice. So
but you can
if that's
nice.
You, then come on and say
you
nice.
You can be nice with being fair.
You can, but I think sometimes maybe you need to make a choice between the two.
Yeah.
Okay. teaching and learning. So that's you, and maybe just a few little bits about you. But I know from your speech at Research Ed, the one where I called you Jason Statham, which probably wasn't the wisest thing that Tom Rogers has ever done. But and it's kind of stuck. But
it has.
How did you? So in your talk, you were talking about this change, this evolution in behaviour.
Yeah.
So how did you change, and why did you need to change the behaviour in this school? Because later on, I'm going to ask you. In fact, one of my next question is, what advice would you give to a head or a leader coming into, and I've put in inverted commas, a mess?
Yeah.
Now let's say that it's a mess in terms of behaviour first. So what did you do?
So what we did here, and to be fair, the behaviour was, without going into loads of detail, it was a mess. It was like the Wild West, and it was very difficult, and the staffing body were broken when I joined. And actually the bulk of the students were broken because they wanted somebody to take control of what was going on in the school. So in terms of what I did, the first 6 weeks in post, this will sound like I did nothing. I met with every single member of staff individually to talk about this school, to talk about what's good, bad and different, what needed to be done to resolve it. I did the same with groups of students, and the narrative from everybody was the same. We need somebody to get a firm grip of this school and to lead it, basically. Within that 6 weeks, though, I was out and about a lot. I was in departments every day looking at what was going on, not to spy on teachers and make teachers' lives hell, but to see what the interactions were like. We looked through the behaviour system that was in place, and it was convoluted to say the least. And then we brought in a series of non-negotiables really early on, within the first 2 weeks, for which we would exclude because of the extreme behaviours that were exhibited. And the school had stopped excluding for 2 years prior to my joining.
At all? No exclusions?
No exclusions whatsoever. Because the school was at one stage outstanding, and it had been advised to stop excluding in the way that it had been, and the fear was they would lose their outstanding badge. And the irony is they did lose their outstanding badge. But that allowed real antisocial behaviours to just become... That's a lesson change bell.
This is real.
Not fire alarm.
This is real.
That allowed the social norm to become what you wouldn't want it to be. So I then spent the next 6 weeks, the second half of the first kind of full term in post, training everybody for the new system student care. We then brought in a new model of student care, which you've seen today, which privies the role of the tutor, which has total continuity and consistency in terms of the people that work around the students. There are punitive sanctions, as you've seen, so there's 3 really clear rules within classrooms, which are consistent across all our classrooms, and they're visible and on display. We've got 2 clear, consistent approaches to mobiles and to punctuality to school as well. But those rules are really, really simple. They're really clear. They're really over-communicated. Yes, students will accrue behaviour points if they break the rules. If they break the rules once, that's kind of like a warning. Don't do it again. They engage in a restorative style conversation at the end of the day with their tutor. But if they get 2 or more, they're in a centralised same-day detention. So kind of in answer to your question, we have centralised the approach to behaviour within the school. We've taken away a big burden of workload from subject teachers, from heads of department, and it's more that the pastoral and senior team have kind of bossed that. We've increased visibility across the whole school so that pastoral staff and senior staff, including myself, are always yomping the corridors. Our classroom doors are always open in terms of teaching. That's the pedagogical approach that we have. But that's so we can go in and out of rooms to make sure the culture and the climate's right, not, again, to spy on teacher X. And it's supportive.
And to be fair, I mean, I was with you this morning. We did, I think, 2 walks around, maybe 3. And I have to say, you know, my observation would be that there is a climate of trust. That, you know, I didn't see anybody kind of react to your presence in the room. So, And
I don't want the lesson to stop when I walk in. It should just flow naturally. We built up an army of support as well for our pupils. We've got an extensive student care wing, so we've got a positive impact centre. We've engaged pupils in fast learning, direct instruction, as you saw a couple of lessons of today, for those students that are not yet secondary ready, to help them with literacy and numeracy. We've changed the way that teaching assistants work to support students in a more personalised one-to-one manner behind closed doors, rather than being glued to them in lessons and becoming kind of dependent on a teaching assistant. We've got school counsellors, school nurse, an army of safeguarding leads. So there's a lot of wraparound care as well. And then underpinning that is a house system, which is all about rewarding students and creating healthy competition. So we're very routine driven for behaviour, but with lots of rewards and lots of warmth and love and support. I think it's the right blends.
Yeah, and I know that you've shared, I mean, that gives an outline, I think, in terms of how you've turned the behaviour around with that mixture of reward, sanction, whatever, ethos. You've shared on social media a few different opinions about things, so I thought we could maybe run through some of those now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Emails. I know you've had a few good rants.
I've never
Sam.
spoken about emails.
You've had a few good rants and a few good exchanges. Now, I've got to be honest, I think
yes.
I'm going to disagree with you
when
you answer it. I'm not sure because I don't know what you're going to say yet. But what is your problem with email?
Okay. So if I think back to a former life, email was 24/7, and I used to get, as a senior leader, 350 emails a day. Very genuine, including at weekends, and it's just non-stop. And my view, and again, this is where it has to be led from the top, and it has to be part of an institutional culture for it to work.
Yeah.
But we've, in effect, we have an email embargo at weekends and at holidays. My view is that at those points, because we're not in school, we should leave each other alone. That's not to say that you might not be in your office, in your house, planning lessons. You may well be, and I should never say you can't do that. But I think while you're doing that, you don't need to know that on a Saturday evening there's a chug of emails coming in. And I've been on that receiving end where senior leaders are sending me spreadsheets. As a head of department, I used to experience this very genuinely, 11 o'clock at night on a Saturday to be completed on a Tuesday. Now you could say you could ignore that, couldn't you, and pick it up on Monday. But psychologically, it's there, so it's a pressure. And you know that your Monday is going to involve X, Y and Z, and you're probably not going to have the time to do it. So you end up doing it. But I don't think that's right. I think we should leave each other alone. I think we should also think about just what we are sending and how much we're sending. When emails span pages and pages and pages, that's not right. That should be a face-to-face. And that's the bell for the next lesson. And we've had lengthy discussions about that as a senior team, about what we're sending out and why. We've changed all of our meeting structures so there's more opportunity for face-to-face. We've privy departmental time, so departments are together really regularly, at least once a week. And that's all within the remit of the director time that we have. It's not making people work more and more and more, but that's actually helped to regulate just how many emails are sent. So it has to be part of a school culture, otherwise you can't just go, well, I'm not doing my emails at weekends. But my view is we should move away from this idea we're a 24/7 profession. Personally.
Okay, I'm not going to disagree with that then. I think that's. I think the only thing I would say is that I suppose when it comes to reducing workload or teacher well-being, choice for me is key.
Yeah, I understand.
So I can understand the argument of if I want to check out at 3 o'clock on a Friday or whatever, 3:30 on a Friday. Completely check out and then maybe go back to my emails on Sunday afternoon, but I suppose that doesn't really affect what you're saying in a way because they can still do that if they want. So okay,
we've agreed.
We've agreed.
I've just beaten Tom Rogers, so just want that to be known.
Lesson objectives.
I
know you again. So we're going through
that's become really contentious.
Particular things you've said. So you've said that you prefer big questions to lesson objectives. Would that be right? And how does that play out?
So in terms of kind of the framework for a lesson in this school and the approach that we've taken, and it's, to be fair, it takes about a year to train people in how to do big questions properly, but our lessons hinge around a big question, which in a kind of a Christine counsellism is the hinterlands. And what we try to get staff to think about in terms of the delivery is how does all the core disciplinary knowledge then feed and funnel into that big question. And it gives the students a greater sense of purpose within their lesson. What I don't ever want to see again, and I do think this is an Ofsted kind of tick box metric, is to have your must, should, coulds, or your circle, triangle, squares, with tiered objectives that we're all writing down and we're all highlighting and wasting 15 minutes of a lesson doing. And that was in place when I joined. I do fundamentally think it's a waste of time. If you want objectives for your planning that sit behind the scenes, that's up to you as a teacher. But within the lesson delivery is a big question. It's easy to understand. Today we are looking at was the Wall Street crash important in Hitler's rise to power? That's a fairly easy thing to decipher and understand and work toward.
Okay. Now, in terms of the lessons, because different schools do things in different ways, and we discussed earlier on, you have a kind of set routine that you like teachers to follow within each lesson. Do you want to just explain that routine that you're asking all teachers to do?
So we have a consistent approach across the school, and we debated at one point whether we script lessons, and we decided not to. We're big believers in the rose and shine, and I know that's kind of doing the rounds at the moment, and Tom Sherrington's kind of driven that with his publications. And we're also a big believer in the TLAC principles, which I think, I'm not discrediting at all Doug Lamov, a lot of those are common sense. But the approach that we have is that teachers meet and greet the students at the door. That's warm. Good morning, good afternoon, shake their hands. There's an instant engaged task, which is retrieval practice. So again, we're using research to inform our approach. There's a big question on display, so the students engage in those 10 questions.
Yeah.
They then self-mark them because the teacher will go through the answers in whatever format the teacher wants.
Yeah.
They'll introduce the big question to the class, they'll give a context to the lesson and how that links to the lesson before, and then they go into the lesson delivery. Then it's up to the teacher how that lesson is delivered. And then in terms of how a lesson ends, we expect the teachers, and it might be this is a sequence of lessons, just to signpost what's coming next, or that they're going to carry on doing the same thing next time, and then to dismiss the class in an orderly manner. And that really is it in terms of the kind of institutional routine.
Yes.
From that perspective.
That makes sense.
I'm not sure for our setting that I really want to prescribe, to the second what teachers should be doing.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, would you say that a lot of the lessons here are teacher-led? In most cases?
Yeah, I would argue that they are. I mean, we've deliberately recalibrated the way classrooms are laid out, so they're in rows, and predominantly the students do sit boy-girl, predominantly, and they face the teacher, so that has promoted a sense that the teacher is kind of, bossing the classroom. The mantra that we have is the teacher is the expert as well. And we've moved in year 10 towards the use of workbooks. So we've stepped a little bit more away from PowerPoint, and we're using visualisers more, and those have manifested themselves across the whole curriculum and in different year groups. So things tend to be more teacher-directed.
Yes.
I would argue.
Yes. Okay, makes sense. And again, I suppose we've touched on behaviour. We've mentioned that. One thing we haven't talked about yet is phones.
Yeah.
I mean, is there anything on phones that mobile phones in schools, mobile phones in classrooms, and mobile phones in general? Any views on that?
So I'm about to contradict myself because we're recording on a phone.
We are.
In a school.
Yeah, absolutely.
You saw me speak to the parents this morning. If a parent wants to arm their child with a phone, that's up to them. If they want their child to carry a phone to and from school, that's up to them. Who am I to say you can or can't do that? There's a multitude of reasons why parents want that. I accept that. In the school day, though, my own view is that they serve no place within the school setting. They need to be out the way, out of sight. And we will, it sounds quite fierce, but we will confiscate them for a week if they're using them and they're out and about. And by and large, pupils don't have them out and about because it's like a third arm for them. Kind of almost being decapitated.
Yeah.
Their social network goes when we take those phones away. And I think they're a huge distraction to learning. I don't think they add a lot to learning, in my humble opinion. So my view in an educational setting is they serve no place, no purpose.
Makes sense. And that's similar, again, probably to certainly both the other leaders I've talked to so far in this little journey. So, when you are hiring teachers, what are the things you look for, and what is your kind of perfect candidate? If you were to kind of summarise it or put it in a nugget, I know we were talking earlier on, there's a lot of people who probably want to work with you, Sam, especially after, I would say. So what are the things that you look for? What is it in a nutshell?
Yeah, I'm not looking for the finished, polished product. I don't even know what that is, if I'm really honest, or what if you put it in an Ofsted sense, an outstanding teacher, what is an outstanding teacher? I could be outstanding in a different setting, walk into somewhere else and find I really struggle, and the perception is I'm not very good.
Do you agree with the statement, outstanding is consistently good?
I would say so. And you know, even then, you have bad days, you have bad lessons, you have classes which are a challenge. We all do. I know if I was to pick up a normal timetable myself, there'd be classes I'd be great with and classes that would challenge me. In terms of what I look for, though, somebody who buys into what we're about. You know, we've got a very deep-rooted now and embedded approach to every aspect of the school in many regards in terms of behaviour, pedagogy, workload. So you've got to be buying into that. And I want people to come in kind of eyes wide open before they join us, that they're buying into that approach.
Yes.
So on a recruitment day, you know, an interview day, I will normally do a talk for 40 or 45 minutes about school culture. And I will ask at the end of that, if this doesn't, you know, sit with you, are you sure you really want to carry on with today? That's not meant in a horrible way, but if someone's sat there thinking, I feel uncomfortable, this is the wrong school. Because again, it's about choice, isn't it? But then in terms of what I'm then looking for, so once we know their mission aligned, and we'll tease that out in the day, if it's a classroom teacher, I hope that they are passionate about their subject. I hope that they've got a decent baseline of knowledge. It doesn't have to be perfect. We can work on that. And that they're a team player. And they're the kind of things I really look for in terms of a fit.
What does team player mean to you? I mean, what would that mean to you as principal?
I want someone that's going to go into Faculty X and contribute to that department, work with the other members within that team. That doesn't mean putting in a 50-hour day. But it's that they're going to be part of that team and gel with those other personalities in there. And it's important that when we do interview for whatever job, the department are on board and the head of the department's on board. Otherwise, that's really dangerous.
For sure. And what did moving on to kind of bigger issues in UK education now? But what do you think? What do you think the worst? What do you think the worst thing about UK education is at the moment? What's the thing that you think in terms of the worst thing?
Funding is that's a cliched one. I'm sure loads of heads talk about this. I appreciate there was an announcement just before the summer and just after the summer about billions and billions and billions of rainy day money being pumped in. There's no devil in the detail. We, as heads, we are clueless as to what that actually means at a regional, local and school-based level. So being able to actually properly financially plan, which we're expected to do for the next 3 to 5 years, it's like Mystic Meg. I may as well just shake one of those snow globes and just see where they all fall, obviously at the bottom. But we can't. It's really, really, really difficult to do so. I think the other thing, the PR around Ofsted at the moment is that they're making great strides forward, they're becoming more responsive and they're listening, but I still think there's uncertainty, with schools that have not yet had an Ofsted inspection of the new framework. Do they really mean what they say? Are they really looking for the things that they claim they're looking for? We would all hope that they are, because they sound reasonable within reason, but we don't know. And I guess in this school setting, in this context, I won't know until that happens to me. And that's always a worry. And what I hope schools don't do is do things for Ofsted.
But do you understand why they do?
I do.
Or not?
I do. I think there's a huge pressure on senior leaders to do things for Ofsted. And some multi-academy trusts, their agenda will be, we need to do this because Ofsted is expecting X, Y and Z. But I'm not sure that's always the right thing to do.
Well, actually, my final question was going to be, Ofsted, keep, radically reform or abolish?
I know there's proposals, isn't there, from Labour without getting into politics too much, to abolish. But then the proposal is to replace it with another regulatory body of some description. Sometimes I think it's better the devil you know. I've seen lots of bad things happen because of Ofsted, without going into kind of devilish detail, and people losing jobs because of it, which I have my own views on. I think there needs to be more reform to what's happening, and more of a real sense of context. That still doesn't feel like it's there, even under the new framework. So going back to funding, there are regional differences across the land, which they won't take into account. School X gets £8,000 per pupil, School Y gets 4.5. How can you accurately measure school against school with the same framework, in the same parameters, when actually the level of money fundamentally is almost 45-50% different? What I could do if I had another £3,000 per pupil in my school, which would add about another £2.5 million to my budget, would be amazing. And equally, geographically, in some areas where parents are more affluent, potentially, those children will have tutors outside of school. That makes an impact. That makes a difference.
Agreed.
Compared to another school where the parents haven't got totally hate you to rub together, and as much as they might want to do that, they can't.
Agreed.
Or they might not value education. That's difficult to measure as well. So there's so many different factors that I still think aren't taken into account.
Agreed. I was just going to ask you as well, I forgot actually a minute ago to ask you, but talking about leadership, I talked actually just last week about kind of visible leadership and visibility and what that means, and obviously I've shadowed you for the whole day.
Yeah.
I would say you're a very visible leader, but what does that mean to you? What does being a visible leader mean to you?
On one front it's being a presence, and I think that is so important. But then you could be a very negative presence, or you could be a very positive presence, depending on the approach that you take. If you're going around scrutinising everything and everyone and criticising people because they haven't done that quite in the way you wanted, that can have quite a detrimental effect. My view is to be positively supportive. Even if a teacher gets something wrong, I'm not going to go and lambast them and scream at them.
Yeah.
But I will consider. Did that happen, and did they get it wrong because of me? Because actually I've let them down because I've not trained them properly, or explained how I want something to work properly. I see it as being a supportive mechanism, and I see it as part of actually role modelling as well, what I expect. So the way I conduct myself around the school, whilst I don't want everyone to be a carbon copy of me, if I interact with students by shaking their hands, say for sake of argument, other staff start to replicate that as well. And that's kind of part of a subliminal training in many regards that kind of happens across the school.
Indeed.
But I ultimately see it as being supportive. As you saw today, we've gone in and out of every classroom. I've asked all the teachers how they are they happy? I've said hello to the kids. I think that's really important, personally.
Agreed. It's really impressive. So that's more or less it. I am going to tweet out later a kind of day in the life of Mr. Strickland because during the day I've been taking photographs, some videos, and I've basically done an hour by hour, minute by minute kind of go through of the day, which I hope will interest people who are potentially interested in going into educational leadership or being a principal or whatever. Thank you for having me.
It's been a real privilege to have you.
It's been absolutely amazing. I'm going to go and turn that phone off, but while I thought you could tell people about the event you have coming up on Saturday.